Welcome to the Chapter 5 summary of Butler's DMT Field Guide. The title of this chapter is Grandma's Recipe, How to Make Your Own DMT. Now before I get into the recipes, ingredients needed, and the procedures to make your own DMT, whether that be crystals, ayahuasca, or your own DMT brew, I would recommend rereading the disclaimer at the beginning of my book. Don't do anything stupid, dangerous, or illegal. This is not some recreational drug that you should be selling or nonchalantly giving to people. DMT is rocket fuel for the psyche, and it could just as easily blow up the vessel as it could send it to the moon. That being said, humans have been extracting DMT for thousands of years, whether it be endogenously through meditation or through simple extraction processes. There are dozens of recipes that can be easily found online, as well as in my book. If anyone's interested in getting a free PDF copy of my book with the Chapter 5 recipes, my email address is at the end of this video. Feel free to reach out and I'll happily send you a copy. The extraction process is relatively simple and easy, and the ingredients needed are easy to obtain. What ingredients you need depend on if you're making a DMT brew or ayahuasca, or if you're making DMT crystals to smoke. The easiest of the recipes is to make the DMT brew or ayahuasca. For clarification, ayahuasca is made with two specific ingredients, where I mentioned DMT brew because there is an assortment of plants and other ingredients that can be used. The two most common species of plant material used to extract DMT is Mimosa hostilis and Acacia confucia. Do your due diligence as far as what company you use. However, there are several companies that will mail these basic plant materials throughout the world. Again, don't do anything illegal or stupid. Make sure you're not breaking any laws. The first type of recipe that I go over in this chapter is what I call DMT brew, which is made to either drink or eat and can be used to drink straight up. It can be added to your smoothies, can be added to oatmeal, can be added to your brownies. Once you make this liquid, you really can use it in an assortment of ways. Making a DMT brew is a very, very simple process. It's basically just like making a strong tea. You have to start with the base DMT material. So again, typically that's going to be Mimosa hostilis or Acacia confucia. Depending on what form you get this material in, you may have to grind it up or chop it. The Mimosa hostilis can come in big chunks of bark, which kind of looks like mulch. If you do get it that size, you do have to grind it up with either a coffee grinder or a blender to get the maximum surface area. But pretty much you're boiling this material for several hours. If you are making a DMT brew or ayahuasca, you have to add what's called an MAOI, which is a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. All that does is it allows your body to actually enjoy the DMT experience without metabolizing it too quickly. If you don't add this ingredient and you simply ingest the DMT, you won't necessarily have a psychedelic experience, and it certainly won't last as long. Typically when you are ingesting DMT brew, or if you do make the traditional ayahuasca, the experience can last several hours, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 plus hours, depending on how much you ingest. How much you take and what is a proper dose is pretty subjective and really depends on a lot of factors, including what your intention is. Depending if you want a full blast off or if you're just trying to initiate yourself and gently get into the feeling of what it's like to have this chemical running through your body. In addition to the basic plant materials that you use, so once again, the plants that have the actual DMT and whatever plants you're using for the MAOIs, the plant that is used to make the traditional ayahuasca is called Banisteriopsis caapi, if I'm saying that properly. But there are several other monoamine oxidase inhibitors that you can use, including kava kava, turmeric, black pepper. There are harmine concentrates that you can buy that are very strong. Depending on how much of this you use, also depends on how much of the brew you're actually making. In my book, I start off with 1.5 gallons of distilled water, and after boiling off several times, you're left with enough for a couple servings. In addition to the main ingredients, I also recommend experimenting with other flavors or other herbs that you either enjoy or you're looking for other beneficial factors. So you can add ashwagandha, peppermint, different types of teas, your own turmeric. You can add clove, honey, sweeteners as needed. The whole point is to try to make something that you actually enjoy making. And once again, it's such a simple process that it is something that you can experiment and kind of dial in your own brew. Every time I've made a recipe, I used a combination of plant-based materials that contain the DMT, as well as a combination of different MAOIs. And every time I made it, I made a very strong brew that I was able to either microdose, or I was able to have a full DMT journey that lasted several hours. The next basic type of recipe is to make the DMT crystals that you can either smoke, make your own vape cartridge, or put into a crystal rig specially designed to smoke the DMT. The recipe and process to make the crystals is a little bit more complicated and takes a little bit more time than to make the DMT brew. That being said, a basic understanding of chemistry, following the directions, and proper precautions, it is a pretty straightforward recipe. The recipe that I used is easily found online, but I break it down in my book into bullet points to try to make it easier to follow. But you need basic ingredients. So the DMT plant-based material, again, typically it's going to be Mimosa hostilis or Acacia confucia. You're going to need distilled water, white vinegar, naphtha, which is typically found as a paint thinner, and sodium hydroxide, which is typically sold as lye. Make sure if you are getting the sodium hydroxide or lye that it is straight and 100% lye and it's not mixed with any other chemicals. This is available in hardware stores as well as the naphtha. Proper precautions are needed. Make sure it doesn't touch your skin, get in your eyes. The naphtha is extremely flammable and combustible. It needs to be properly ventilated. So these are the things, once again, just normal common sense, proper precautions. Don't do anything stupid. And the recipe is pretty straightforward. Now, before you actually get into the recipe where you have to boil the plant-based material, you have to perform something which produces lysis, which is the breaking of the cell membranes. All that means is whatever plant-based material that you get, you have to make sure you do a couple freeze-thaw cycles where it does freeze for several hours and then thaw. And what this is going to do is it will disintegrate the plant cells enough where the DMT gets released easier. And this does make a difference. Simple step, but definitely don't rush the process by a couple of days by skipping this. You really want to make sure you do that freeze-thaw cycle a couple times with your plant-based material. Now, the actual recipe is pretty simple, and again, I'll happily send a free PDF copy that has these recipes. The recipe has several steps, but if I could, a paragraph in that chapter tries to outline the basic process of what's happening. I'm going to read that now. Boil the plant-based material in the water and vinegar to alter the pH. Strain liquid and reduce by evaporation. Mix in lye to alter pH again to make DMT accessible. Add the naphtha and shake aggressively to transfer the DMT into solution. Carefully extract the naphtha/DMT solution and allow to reach and stay at freezing point for 48 plus hours, which will force the DMT to form crystals and precipitate out. DMT will either attach to the walls of the container or settle to the bottom. Crystals are then transferred to a drying plate and the naphtha is allowed to completely evaporate. What is remaining is free-base DMT in pure form. These crystals can be smoked as is or turned into vaping cartridges for easy usage. Now, obviously that's a simplification of the recipe, but those are the basic steps. Once the DMT is actually pulled off and strained out into that naphtha solution, which is going to be a clear liquid, that's put into the freezer and it turns milky white, and then that solidifies and you have what's called freeze precipitation happen, and all of those DMT crystals will settle out. Once they're settled out, it's easy to remove, and then you just need to properly evaporate them. That evaporation process will take a good amount of time. That evaporation process of the naphtha does take 24 hours plus. Make sure you don't try to rush this process either with a fan or anything like that, because obviously you'll blow away the crystals. Make sure that you're drying it in an area that's free of dust or lint or dog hair or anything like that. Obviously you want to make sure you have the purest possible product. The end result of this product is what is the spirit molecule, the America molecule. This is the most powerful molecule that honestly saved my life, and this is why I felt it important to write this book, and I felt it important to share these recipes, because it really is such a simple, easy process. The materials needed are inexpensive and easily obtainable, and this is information that's been known for quite some time. Again, I'm not telling anybody to do anything illegal. This is not something I take lightly. But this is not truly my grandmother's recipe. This is information that's readily available online. I just wanted to make it a little bit easier to digest and easier to go over the recipe. Also, if you have any questions, I'm also accessible and reachable by that email address. I appreciate your time. Thank you.